I'm about to die. I'm going to die, and the family that just adopted me are going to be responsible. Right now, I'm locked in a room waiting to be taken to surgery where my organs will be harvested and God knows what will happen to my body. I'm not supposed to even have a cell, but I have to get this message out. If not for my sake, for the health and safety of countless orphans that are out there and will be used for these people. They aren't my real family, and maybe I was never meant to have one anyway. But one thing for sure, the orphan lottery is a lie. If you had told me that exact phrase 4 days ago, I would have said you were crazy. I've been wanting to have my name called all my life. My name is Derek, and yes, I'm an orphan. I grew up in a residential center in South London alongside about a dozen other kids just like me. We all had different stories about how we got here, disasters or disease or something in between. For me, it was a fire. I lost my family when I was 7 and it burnt half of my body. When I was placed at the orphanage, they said I was lucky. We have a special program here that helps children like you called the Orphan Lottery, the headmaster said. It was a horrible name, but as she explained it, the way it worked made sense. There are literally millions of families that want to adopt. Unfortunately, for the most part, everyone wants to have a newborn, an infant. They want a child that they can call theirs. Older orphans are usually swept under the rug. My predecessor felt this was unfair. Wouldn't you agree? Before I could even voice a response, they just kept rattling on about how great the program was. I have to admit, I was impressed, especially with the accolades they gave it. The lottery is designed to counteract a cruel world. Precisely once a month when a family comes to us for adoption purposes, we pull a name from random for the selection. These families are more well-to-do. They donate more to our programs and they understand that every child we take care of here deserves a fighting chance to get to live a normal life. I got to see how the lottery worked less than a week after coming to the orphanage. All of us were huddled into a small assembly room where we normally had breakfast and told to pick numbers. Then we sat and listened to an intercom broadcast of the local news and weather like normal before finally a number was called out. It was a young girl about 3 rows in front of me. She leapt up, waving the number excitedly from side to side. Then, 2 men in white coats entered the room and congratulated her before our normal duties resumed. It was a simple and clean process, but for someone like me that was sure I was going to be trapped in the orphanage for life, it was profound. Winning the lottery was going to be my only way out of here. There were some skeptics, and I wish dearly I had listened to them before my name was called. A close friend of mine, Peter, wasn't sure about any of it. Some of us made jokes and called him Paranoid Pete. How I wish we had actually listened. It's odd that we don't get any testimonials from people that have been adopted, isn't it? They can come and tell us about how the families are taking care of them, how the lottery benefited them and stuff, he said. Peter had been there since he was 5. You're just mad your name has never been called, someone said. I hope it never gets called. Something about all of it is fishy. But I didn't want to doubt. I knew it could possibly be too good to be true, but I didn't want it to be. I had to wait 2 years before my name was finally called. It can be hard to just toss aside your hopes and dreams after that long. But when my number came up during the morning routine, I felt someone shove something into my back pocket as the 2 men entered to escort me to what I thought was freedom. I didn't get a chance to realize it was a cell phone until I was well away from the orphanage. The family that took me in seemed nice enough at first. Not very chatty because even when I asked them what I should call them, neither the man or woman bothered to respond. They did quickly introduce me to their son though, a boy about my age named Andrew. Andrew was on oxygen and looked to be in severe pain every time he took a breath. He gave me a look that told me he was suffering. Everything will be taken care of on Friday, dear, the woman said, kissing his forehead. No red flags went off yet, but the second night after an awkward and quiet dinner, Andrew snuck into the guest room where they were keeping me. You need to leave, he rasped. I sat up and ruffled my hair. Why would I do that? I've wanted this my whole life. You want to die? Because that is what will happen to you if you stay here, he snapped. His voice was trembling and I asked if he was okay. Don't you get it? My parents selected you to give me your lungs. They're going to hire a surgeon and kill you. I almost laughed at the insane notion, but Andrew was dead serious. You're just trying to scare me, I said. Then he pulled out his phone and showed me a video of a girl. I recognized her from the orphanage. She was already dead in the clip, her eyes removed, and another child was being given surgery for those exact optical implants. This is what the lottery's for. They don't want to give you a chance at family. They want to give other families a chance at life that has been taken. I wanted to think it was a lie, and I even got angry and shoved him. His parents came in, took him away, and locked me in my room. That was yesterday. I've been waiting ever since. The father came in one time too. I think he wanted to apologize for what was about to happen. You must understand that the chances of adoption for an orphan dwindle away every single year. Families are content. We are taken care of and peaceful these days. We have no need for waste of oxygen in society, and I'm sure you agree that you don't want to be stuck at that dreadful place all your life. I've been trying to think of what to say and how to make it clear to anyone else out there what is happening, but I'm not sure if anyone will believe me. I've used the internet and checked everywhere I can think of. No one has heard of the orphan lottery. It's been a huge lie that was only told to us. I can hear them coming now. Please, if you do believe me, save the others. Give them that hope that has been maliciously stolen.
I've been under a lot of stress lately from work, and my boyfriend has noticed, so he decided to surprise me with a gift basket which included a chance to go to try out a newly opened spa. It was a ticket for two, but he said he didn't want to go, so I called up one of my friends, Mel, and asked if she wanted to join me that Friday. Manicure and sauna? For free? Sign me up, she said excitedly. I pulled up the spa's website to confirm our reservations and then hugged my boyfriend so tight I was sure that his arms would pop off. Once everything was set up, the rest of that week flew by and it was finally Friday. Mel picked me up around 10 and we found the place in less than 20 minutes. As soon as we got in the parking lot, I got a funny feeling we were in the wrong place. There are no other cars here, I said as I looked around. The building didn't look like the website, but the address matched. Maybe they're still designing everything, Mel suggested as she shut the car off and grabbed her purse. I didn't know for sure what to make of the empty space, but followed her indoors. There was only one employee at the front desk, an older woman that looked like she was one day away from death's door. She leaned against a cane and adjusted her glasses as she opened up the registration book, asking what time our reservation was for. 11, Mel said as I showed her the certificate that gave us a free spa day. The woman seemed surprised by the coupon and took it from us, examining it as best as she could. Are you sure about this? The woman asked, her voice cracking as she struggled to stand upright. It's free, yeah? She typed in the certificate information and then told us to sit and wait. A short while later, two younger women arrived in scarlet kimonos and guided us toward the first room. I was pleased to see that the stone sanctum they used for their rock massage was a lot better looking than the other parts of the facility. Maybe Mel was right and they focused their money here, I thought. As we got to the first stage of the spa, an employee told us to place all of our belongings into a locker room nearby and they would provide us with robes to wear during our stay. Now this is more like it, Mel exclaimed, laughing as she ran to the closest changing room. I sent a quick snapshot to my boyfriend to tell him we made it here. You can't do that, ma'am, the employee told me, extending their hand to take the phone from me. Confused, I realized I hadn't read through their policies and apologized as I deleted the photo. Maybe that was to keep other people's privacy, but Mel and I were the only ones there. I gave up my cell phone and went to the other changing room, undressing and getting comfortable in robe. The employees then guided us to lay down on the tables and told us our massage therapist would arrive shortly. I've been waiting for this, Mel hummed. She relaxed on the table and closed her eyes, and I did the same. The room was quiet for a few minutes and I nearly fell asleep. Then I heard a noise from the nearby door and opened my eyes just barely to see two petite women enter wearing face masks and scarlet kimonos. Lay back and relax, they ordered as I turned my head. It was the first time I noticed there were cameras in the corners of the room. That struck me as odd, and despite the fact that they were very soothing with their hands, I didn't like the idea of anyone else in the spa watching me. What are those cameras for? I asked as I lay back down. Just for your own privacy, ma'am, and our own legal protection, one therapist told me. I heard Mel snicker. "Don't worry, Brittany. They aren't looking at us," she said. I tried to remain calm and enjoy the massage, but I kept thinking I could feel the camera watching me. Once the massage ended, it was time for the sauna. The older woman came in and whispered something to the younger women, and they then told us we would be going to separate rooms for the treatment. "Guess I'll see you on the other side," Mel said. I couldn't help but to wonder why, since it didn't seem like anyone else was here, but I decided to not press the issue. Once in the sauna, I let the heat hit me and relaxed fully. Closing my eyes, I told myself all of my worries were for nothing. When I woke, another petite lady informed me it was time for the mani-pedi, the final step of the process, and I groggily followed her to the next room. As I settled in, I kept checking the door to see when Mel would join me, but she never did. "Did my friend already finish?" I asked the lady as they started on my toes. "Excuse me, miss?" "My friend, she went to the other sauna over there," I said, pointing toward the door on the right. The lady seemed confused about what I was saying and didn't respond, focusing on finishing my toes. When I was done, Mel still hadn't showed up, and I thought maybe she was waiting at the front lobby, but she wasn't there either. "Is everything all right?" the older woman asked as I approached the counter. "I'm just waiting for my friend," I explained. This time, the older woman was the one to look perplexed. "Your friend? Ma'am, you came alone," she told me. I stared at her for a long moment, realizing she was dead serious, and chuckled back. "No, I didn't. You might have me confused with another client. I came with a blonde woman. Her name is Mel," I told her. The woman paused and checked her computer. "I'm sorry, I only have you registered," she told me. "Well, that isn't right. Check your security feed. We were here together," I said. "Ma'am, I can't pull the camera simply because you claim that you came with a friend. Our records show there is no one else here," she said defiantly. I sighed in frustration and pointed toward the locker. "Her stuff is over there in that locker. What the heck are you people trying to pull? Is this like punked or something?" I asked angrily. "There's no need to raise your voice. I'm afraid that you must be confused, and I'm not about to have you disturbing my facility with that attitude," the older woman replied. I glared at her and stormed out to the parking lot, trying to figure out what to do. Mel's car was no longer parked outside. Realizing that made me suddenly wonder if that bad feeling I had earlier was right. Something was off here. I called my boyfriend and asked him what I should do. His response was succinct. "Call the cops. If there's camera footage, they can pull it," he said. I did just that, and they arrived in 15 minutes. They took my statement first and then walked inside to the spa to request the footage. At the first, I could tell the older woman was reluctant to comply, but eventually she led us to the security room near the east side of the building. "Why do you keep footage of your clients anyway?" an officer asked. I was glad to see it wasn't just odd to me. "Security, sir. You wouldn't believe how often people come here and claim a masseuse touched them inappropriately, or some client claims their items were stolen," the woman said as she gave me a cold stare. The officer accepted that reasoning, and we watched as the footage for the day played. It was grainy and choppy, but I saw one person laying on a massage table face down in the room. There was no sign of another client. The older woman fast-forwarded, and when the footage ended, the police seemed satisfied, but I was mortified. "You can't even tell if that's me in the picture. They could have doctored this," I shouted. "Ma'am, there are no other cameras in the building, and no evidence suggests your friend was ever here. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I think we're done here," the first officer decided, and then apologized to the spa owner as we were led back to the front lobby. I immediately felt a knot in the pit of my stomach as we were walking toward the end of the hall. "Can I use the restroom?" I asked. The woman nodded absently, and I ducked inside to calm myself down and think. There were only a few other doors in that facility. They had to have taken Mel in one of them, I thought. But how was I going to get there? I breathed in and out and finally had a plan. It was a stupid, crazy plan, but at least I had one. I waited a few more minutes and stepped back out to the hallway, casually walking to the front as I waited for a therapist to come by. One of them had a badge that I knew opened doors in the spa. As soon as they were next to me, I snatched the badge and ran. Behind me, I heard shouting as I found the closest door and scanned the badge. On the other side, I used a few stray cleaning items to block the door and then looked around. There was a nearby facility blueprint for fire escapes, and I saw on the map there was a location marked "Employees Only" to my right. I heard what sounded like a smoke alarm going off, and I knew that my time was limited, so I ran to that door and swiped the badge again. On the other side, there were stairs leading to what looked like a loading dock. Except this was for an underground tunnel that had a large 18-wheeler sitting next to it. I snuck towards the truck, trying to figure out what all of this was for, when I heard voices and hid behind boxes. "The shipment has been paid for. Get it moving tonight. Here's extra for scrubbing the footage." I peeked out and saw a line of women with chains on their hands and feet. All of them were still in their spa robes, including my friend. They were being loaded onto the truck. I ran to the truck once they were loaded, my mind racing. Mel had been sold? What the heck was happening here? I was too terrified to even fathom it. Instead, I climbed to the passenger side of the truck and listened to make sure it was empty. Inside, I found the keys and quickly cranked the engine. I shifted to drive and heard shouts as the driver and spa employees tried to stop me. Instead, I floored it, going down the tunnel. It came out on the highway about 2 miles down the road, and I saw the same cops I had bothered earlier getting ready to merge with traffic. As quick as I could, I drove the truck into the middle of the road and slammed on my brakes to get their attention. Collapsing in exhaustion and fear, I waited as they swarmed the truck and demanded I get out. Inside, there were at least 20 women, all being shipped to God knows where. Thanks to me, the spa was shut down, but who knows how many came there before and never returned. "Next time," I told my boyfriend with a nervous, frightened chuckle, "just send me to the nail salon." "How much for Milo?" the unsettling man asked. I beg your pardon?" I responded. The 5:26 p.m. train home from Manchester is usually brimming with commuters. On this evening, however, it was oddly empty. To ensure I stayed awake and didn't miss our stop, I pressed my face against the ice-cold window beside me. But when a voice disrupted the silent train carriage, I slowly peeled my frozen cheek from the glass pane and twisted to face the frightful figure sitting across the aisle from me. "How much for Milo?" the man repeated. He was wearing a black trench coat that encased his body from his neck to his feet. He also had an entirely unremarkable face, brown hair and brown eyes. There was nothing particularly frightening about him, and yet everything about him frightened me. He was the only other person in my section of the train, and that realization paralyzed me. Every woman dreads such an encounter. Still, this was not the first time I had felt threatened by a strange man in a public space. I fought hard to swallow the monstrous lump in my throat, and I made an effort to deliver my words confidently. "How do you know the name of my child?" I asked. The man responded by nodding at my boy's fluffy blue beanie. It had his name stitched across the front, a handmade present from my mum. The explanation seemed rational, so my heart slowed a little, but the man's gaze still filled me with an overwhelming sense of impending doom. "Please leave me alone," I said, setting a firm boundary. I gazed down at the small bundle of joy in my lap. Milo was wriggling around with a contented look on his face. I remember thinking that I was ready to die for my boy. I envisioned myself lunging for the man's throat, tearing a chunk out of it with my teeth. I was not going to let any harm come to my baby. I would do anything to protect him. "How much would it take?" the man gently inquired. "I have pepper spray in my pocket," I instantly retorted. He smiled, and it was, without a doubt, the most horrific smile I have ever seen. It was not even particularly malicious or threatening, it was simply wrong. The curvature of his grin was lopsided, and his lips twitched almost imperceptibly for the briefest moment, but I noticed it. It looked as if the man had never smiled before. It was as if he were simply attempting what he had assumed to be a smile. "I can see this isn't the right time," he conceded, standing up. I clenched, clutching Milo in my arms. My eyes had not blinked during our entire conversation. I had not dared to close them, even for a millisecond. "The next stop is Mill Hill," came a voice over the tannoy. "This is me," the man declared. I watched and waited. He did not depart the train, but many others did. I did not want to be left alone on a carriage with him. Acting quickly and hugging Milo tightly to my chest, I darted for the doors and followed the crowd of people onto the platform. With bated breath, I watched the man on the train, and he watched me. He did not follow, and when the doors finally closed, I exhaled. I watched the train pull away from the station, almost crying with relief. I still felt my heart pounding furiously against my ribcage, but I did, at the very least, feel I could breathe again. Of course, I now had a much longer walk ahead of me because I'd exited the train 2 stops early. "Just a little walk home, Milo," I promised my boy in a half-convincing attempt to conceal my terror. "It's good to stretch our legs, eh?" The problem is that I had to walk along dark, icy roads.
There were plenty of people around at that time as everybody was coming home from work, so the initial part of the journey was not too overwhelming. I did receive some judgmental looks. People were probably wondering why a lone woman with a baby was walking home in the dark. I didn't blame them. Every ounce of my being wanted to call an Uber or return to the station and wait for a later train, but I stubbornly pressed onwards. I didn't exactly have the spare funds for any additional transport anyway. It was a 2-hour walk on a cold night in December. I told myself that was manageable. Milo was wrapped up beneath my thick coat, and he had numerous layers. I wasn't majorly worried about warmth, but I started to realize that I'd been very foolish. No, perhaps I'm being harsh on myself. After all, with that man's ghastly smile floating around in my brain, it was hard to think clearly. When protecting a baby, parents can act in irrational ways. Plenty of mothers have made rasher decisions than walking home in the dark, I assured myself. Still, when I reached the tunnels that passed beneath Accrington, I started to think that it might be time to head to the main road. An Uber was a luxury I could scarcely afford, but it wasn't worth risking the safety of Milo and me. I looked at the GPS on my phone. On foot, cutting through the terrifying tunnel, I could reach home in 10 minutes, and the sheltered passage would provide warmth, I told myself. Perhaps it was worth the risk. I eyeballed the cavernous chasm before me and plunged into the gaping mouth of Accrington's gloomy underground tunnel. There were flickering lights lining the walls, but they were covered in mold. Some of them were broken, most of them were faded, and none of them provided sufficient illumination. It was such a long and dark passage that I couldn't even see a reassuring light at the tunnel's exit. There was nothing but a pit of blackness before and behind me. As I started to regret my decision and prepare to turn on my heel, a sudden clunking sound echoed from the darkness at the far end of the tunnel. Milo started to wriggle inside my coat. "Hush, baby," I tenderly pleaded. "It's okay. Mommy's going back the way she came." And then something appeared beneath the dim glow of a tunnel light that still functioned. A man. He raised a hand and waved at me. I did what I should have done long before that. I turned and sprinted back to the tunnel's entrance. I couldn't see where I was going, and I prayed that I would not stumble over anything in the dark. I clutched Milo tightly, but the sudden movement seemed to jolt him from his slumber. He began to wail uncontrollably, and it took all of my bravery not to do the same. How much for Milo? The words carried down the tunnel in a haunting echo, chasing me all the way back to the entrance. I looked at the GPS on my phone, trying to find the fastest way to the main road. Without thinking, I started to cut through the woodland that surrounded me. I know it wasn't very smart to weave between trees in the dark, especially whilst being stalked by a madman, but the footpath seemed too long and windy. The shortcut seemed like the best option. I was fixated on the goal at hand. I had to reach civilization as quickly as possible. I used the flashlight on the back of my phone to light the way, making sure I didn't run headfirst into any trees. Milo continued to cry inconsolably. "I know, baby," I breathlessly whispered as I sprinted onwards. "I know." There was a sudden whistling sound. It filled me with immense dread. It seemed to have the same effect on everything in my surroundings as birds suddenly soared from the trees in a frenzied panic. I kept pushing onwards, but I suddenly recognized the tune. How much is that doggy in the window? The whistling turned into humming. It was a gentle, wispy sound that hovered in the air like a bitter breeze. Eventually, the man began to sing his own demented version of the song in a fragile croon. "How much for that baby in the window?" he delicately sang. My phone's flashlight suddenly caught his face between two trees, and the man pounced upon me, swiping at my arms in a wild attempt to steal my child. He only caught my face, but those fingernails were wretched weapons. Cheeks stinging with claw marks and blood trickling down my face, I sprinted blindly through the trees, driven by primal fear. I felt that I was moments from death. It was nothing short of a miracle when I finally stumbled past the edge of the tree line and found myself standing beside a busy main road. I didn't even think about calling a friend or an Uber. I ran into moving traffic, flailed my arms, and caused two cars in opposite lanes to slam on their brakes. Obviously, the drivers were furious, but their anger quickly subsided when I explained my horrifying predicament. One of them proceeded to call 999, and he waited with me until a police vehicle arrived. The officers escorted Milo and me home. The police collected all the information that I had on the stalker, but I had this horrible feeling that it would be a fruitless endeavor. I think he's still following me and biding his time. I got a job at this new spa in town last week, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to quit.
It just opened up and had a huge banner outside their front lobby advertising the need for fresh faces. My boyfriend actually told me to not go because the place seemed weird to him, and that's what eventually led to the big argument. God, I wish I had listened. There's no windows. That's a red flag, he told me. I arrived on Monday for orientation alongside 3 other women, all young and fresh out of college. Inside the lobby, the place was cleaner than the Sistine Chapel. Our supervisor instructed us we would be changing into uniforms immediately. All of your belongings are going to be taken while you're on the clock. This is so you can focus on our clients and provide them the best service possible, the woman told me. I've worked at jobs that did this before, so I didn't object, and we were given a quick tour of the facility once everyone complied. The place was immaculate. There were stone therapy rooms and saunas. I couldn't help but to notice strange symbols on the walls as we approached different rooms, and I asked what they were for. Just connected to our philosophy here. We believe we can make people better here and heal them, our supervisor said. As the tour ended, we were huddled into a room and told to watch a video that would further explain what sort of experience we were supposed to tailor for the clients. Welcome. Namaste. We hope that your journey here with us is a long one, and the first step is accepting your soul is not yours to have. You are a servant here, a vessel meant for new life to begin, the voiceover said. I didn't even know for sure what this whole process meant, but I assumed it was the spa saying that we were there to cater to the clients. Heck no, I'm not a slave, one woman said and promptly walked out. A few others did as well. I told myself that I needed the money, so I stayed. Remember, the only thing that matters is making our clients become better people. Only you can make that possible. Only your body can heal theirs, the voiceover continued at another segment. You will be a new fire in their life. Their life can be healed through yours. Let us begin and awaken what we are meant to be, the voiceover concluded. They then passed out badges and told us we could use the facilities at our leisure as long as clients were not there. That perk alone made me stop worrying about the weirdness of the orientation. Tuesday came and went, and I had a few clients that settled me into the routine of things. Our supervisor was super sweet, always checking on us, reminding us to eat, making sure we would use the facilities. I went to the sauna a few times on break. Everything was perfect, and it made me put my guard down. As that first week came to a close, I couldn't help but notice a few of the other women who had started yesterday had already left. It puzzled me. Why would they leave just a cozy job? Are you finding yourself healing? My supervisor asked that next Monday. I told them I was enjoying every aspect of the job. They started to give me more perks, nutritious meals that were provided by the spa, designed for healthier living. It was nice, but that nice facade didn't last long. The next day I overslept and missed my first client, and I was called into the supervisor's office. This is a very important part of your job. Our clients need you here. If you can't accept that we belong to them, then you shouldn't be here at all, they warned me. I found that verbiage strange but didn't argue. It was my fault for being late. Then as I ate my lunch, one of my coworkers told me to meet them outside for a smoke break. I don't smoke, I told them. If you know what's good for you, you'll follow me, they said. A bit surprised by their warning, I followed and we got far enough away from the spa that she said we could talk freely. I'm telling you this because I've seen you around a few times. You should leave now because you're next on the list, she said. I'm sorry, next on the list for what exactly? I'm an undercover investigator and I've seen 7 women disappear from the staff since you got on. Have you wondered where they went? They quit? I guessed. The woman sighed and slid her phone to me. Look through those photos and tell me what you see, she instructed me. I skimmed the pictures and saw she had managed to take pictures of clients entering the facility and then leaving. At first, I didn't notice much of a difference. Then, it was plainly obvious. The person leaving looked remarkably different than the person that had come into the building. Are you sure you didn't just get this mixed up? I asked, but even as I asked that, I could tell it was the same person, except their appearance had radically been altered. I'm fairly certain that the spa is using its employees to somehow alter the appearance of their clients, she said bluntly. That would require major surgical equipment. What you're saying sounds outlandish, I told her. She pointed toward my badge and passed me a blank silver one and said, You just got level 2 clearance, right? So the back offices are open.
That's where I noticed other staff disappear. This extra badge should override other doors. Go and see for yourself.
Why can't you do it? I asked.
They're on to me. I have to try and get the word to perform a sting. Today is my last day, so if we don't do this now, I might not be able to prove it, she said. I didn't like the sound of this, but my curiosity got the better of me at the end of my shift. I told my supervisor I would stay late for paperwork and went toward the back corridors using my badge to get inside. Using the silver badge at the next door, I held my breath, expecting it to fail. Instead, the door opened and I was in a long, shiny corridor with more strange symbols. When I got to the next room, I found surgical uniforms and my heart beat faster. Switching into one and slipping a face mask on, I went to the next corridor and found rows of hospital beds. Some of them had people on them. Moving quickly, I went to a nearby surgical theater and watched as some of the nurses that worked as my supervisor took an unconscious woman into the next room. They told me to come and assist. I was too terrified to argue and had to keep my disguise. In the operating room, one of the clients was wheeled in and given anesthesia. The next thing I knew, I was watching as they began to perform plastic surgery on the two people. "Today, a life has been given for a life," one of the doctors announced. The others chanted a strange phrase and bowed their heads. Then they began the next part of the treatment. To my horror, they made incisions and began to take out organs one by one, any that they felt were viable for the client. And then slowly they replaced them, and eventually the body of the employee was basically a bloody mess. I excused myself to the restroom and vomited profusely. This was all the proof the investigator would need. I managed to leave without being seen and tried to find the investigator the next day at work, but they were now gone too. I asked my supervisor about it and she smiled, almost as if aware of the truth we had discovered. "I'm afraid they couldn't continue with our vision. We had to fill their position with a more willing servant," she said. "You're willing to give your all for the clients too, aren't you?" she asked. I lied and said I was. Then today I called in sick. "I'm afraid if I go back, I won't be able to leave. I don't know if the cops will even believe what is happening. This many people going missing should raise red flags, but so far, I haven't seen anything to indicate the spa will be shut down. I think they're watching me now too, and it won't be long before I'm used for their rituals. God forgive me, I won't go back."
I'd been going to college here in Washington State for 2 full semesters before I finally decided to join a fraternity. I'm not a party animal or anything, but the stories I'd heard about a particular fraternity's parties were enough to convince me that I had to do whatever it took to join. Initiation week was exactly what you'd expect. They made us stay up for several nights in a row, eat some raw sardines, stuff like that. The crowning moment of initiation was that each initiate had to spend a night in the so-called murder forest, just outside the city. This forest is famous in our area for being haunted. Apparently, several serial killer victims were found there, and on top of that, people hear weird sounds sometimes. Still, lots of places have local legends, and I figured that the stories had been exaggerated to enhance our hazing experience. So the 6 other initiates and I hopped into vans and we were driven to the edge of the forest. One of the older members told us that we should walk for about an hour along a path and that we'd find a campsite where we could spend the night. Each of us was carrying a backpack with a sleeping bag and tarp to lay on. I had been walking with the other guys in the group for 45 minutes. An idea crossed my mind. The rules we'd been given said we had to spend the night in the forest, not that we had to spend it in a particular area. They wanted us at that campsite so they could come in during the night and mess with us, I had no doubt. So I decided to set off into the woods by myself to avoid the hassle that sleeping in the designated campsite would bring. I congratulated myself on my smarts, thinking I had avoided any trouble. I was wrong. I walked for another 15 minutes or so by myself, lighting my way with a flashlight. I found a nice secluded spot with a clearing. I looked around and saw it was completely empty, so I set up my tarp and laid out my sleeping bag. The forest was alive with the sounds of crickets, birds, and wind. I lay down in my sleeping bag feeling satisfied and flipped off the light. The forest fell silent. I don't mean to say that the wind lulled or that there was a momentary lapse in crickets. I mean that everything that could make a sound stopped making noise all at once. It was so sudden and so complete that I thought I had gone deaf. I pulled my hand up to my ears, but when I rubbed my fingers together, the soft rustling sounded out like normal. I looked around in the pitch darkness, but a thick layer of clouds made the night nearly absolutely dark. I was fumbling for my flashlight when I felt it. A warm, humid breath spread across the back of my neck, like a person was standing 6 inches behind me, blowing slowly. It stood in stark contrast to the chilly early spring air I had been feeling up till then. My hand found the flashlight and I spun it around, illuminating the clearing behind me, revealing nothing but grass and trees. The instant my light turned on, the sound returned to the forest, crickets and cicadas chirping away softly. I started to stand up to leave, but stopped myself. I had to have been psyching myself out. All the stories from the frat must have just been getting to my head. I couldn't explain the silence, but I resolved to stay the night. I laid back down with the light and finally turned it back off. I half expected the forest sound to go with it, but thankfully the crickets and wind stayed constant. I laid in the darkness for a while, trying to relax my heart rate enough to fall asleep. After what must have been half an hour, I finally drifted off. I don't know how much time passed, but I was woken up by a new sound. It was the sound of rhythmic heavy breathing, occasionally broken up by mumbling. The sound was coming from in front of my sleeping bag and high above me, probably some 30 feet away. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app. I took a picture with the flash to light up the clearing and saw a figure in the tree staring down at me. It was a woman wearing a long white dress. She had long black hair that covered her face, and her face, it looked like the skin had worn through in places. She was staring down at me. The image from the flash was burned into my mind. I kicked out of my sleeping bag and started running away through the forest in my bare feet. I couldn't hear motion behind me, but I didn't stop running until I reached the edge of the forest where I got cell service. I grilled the members of the fraternity after I got back, but they each swore that they had nothing to do with it. I had been right about them scaring the other members of the group, but they had just used air horns and guns with blanks to scare them while they slept. I guess it's possible that they were behind it all, but I can't see how they could have made the forest silent or breathed on the back of my neck when not even the other initiates knew where I was. And that woman was not something fraternity members could have created. If I find anything else out, I'll let you know.
When I was about 6 years old, around 2004, my mom started taking my sister and I to Dr. Daniel's pediatric dental office. The dental center was located inside a giant yellow mansion that also doubled as Dr. Daniel's house. It was honestly gorgeous. When I first started going to the dentist, I was extremely shy and actually suffered from selective mutism and had a lot of autistic-like tendencies. Needless to say, I relied heavily on my mother's comfort and for someone to give me a voice because it was extremely anxiety-inducing for me to talk to strangers, especially men for some reason. When my sister and I got called in from the waiting room, my mom followed us to the office until she was told by Dr. Daniels that parents were not allowed to be with their children as it taught kids independence, to which my mom complied to. Once in there, he immediately separated my sister and I, and in reaction to that, I cried because I felt so scared. Dr. Daniels did not like crying, so he grabbed me and put his hands over my mouth and nose, shook me, and aggressively warned me that if I continued to cry and scare the other kids, that he would make my situation a lot worse. Obviously, this scared me even more, so I started to cry again. Dr. Daniels had enough and took me into his house part of the dentist office where he screamed at me again, grabbed me by the neck, and shoved me. His hygienist Judy came over and told me if I continued to cry, she would spank me so hard I wouldn't know what had hit me. Afterwards, he gave me a juice concoction and left me alone in his house for about 5 minutes until he took me back into the dental office and did work on my teeth. I guess I just instinctively knew that if I wanted to survive, I just had to act like I was not terrified and hold on the tears. All I wanted was my mommy. After the first appointment, my sister and I told my mom that we were scared of the dentist and that he was a mean man, but she just took it as me being an anxious child, so we continued to see him. Each visit was just as terrifying. Every time we pulled into the mansion, my heart just melted away inside my chest. I was so scared. It was no longer pretty to look at. Every time we went to the dentist, Dr. Daniels, or the tooth man as he called himself, always had us heavy dental work procedures done. We had seals done on several baby teeth and plenty of teeth removed, some with his fingers, with no regards to pain level at all. And often when having a tooth removal or seals done, your mouth had to be opened up with a retractor. He would leave us there with the retractor on for about 45 minutes or so before he came to work on our teeth. Sometimes he would eat his lunch while we sat there with our mouth open. Probably one of the worst pains I have ever felt in my life. I remember one time when I was in about 3rd grade, I had been leaned down in the chair waiting with the retractor on for an hour. I was in so much pain I couldn't take it. I sat up on the chair and tried to scream and cry as loud as I could. Dr. Daniels came rushing over, angry as could be, took my retractors off, and then took me back into his house part again, where he screamed at me for being a big baby and scaring all the other kids. I was so sad in myself because I hadn't cried in so long. He then took me back to the dental chair and then pinned me down to my seat in a straitjacket. He put my retractors back on and said that I would have to wait longer because I caused such a scene. All I could do was shed silent tears and drool everywhere, and I couldn't even wipe it because he locked up my arms. Afterwards, my mouth would become so swollen and filled with rashes. It hurt to talk for days. It would leave bruises and swells as soon as I left his chair. He would often tell my mother I was a difficult patient if I so much as winced at his torture. Once he removed 6 of my teeth at once, and I could barely eat. While he ripped out teeth, he would often sing songs. It was so Sweeney Todd-like. When I was in the 7th grade, I started getting some new braces, and we started seeing an orthodontist. Not long after that, we stopped seeing Dr. Dan and started seeing a new dentist who was actually nice. I had never known that getting your teeth cleaned didn't have to feel like going through a saw trap. I think my mom took us out of Dr. Dan's practice when the orthodontist looked at our dental records and saw a lot of unnecessary procedures being done on our mouths. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with a friend about our childhood fears, and instantly my mind went to the tooth man. Curious, I Googled him to see what had happened to him, and to my happiness, the practice was shut down. Also left under his name was a Yelp page that was still left up. The page was filled with numerous 1-star reviews from former patients that were once abused as kids in his office, using the page as an outlet to express their trauma. I started to cry because their experiences were so close and some identical as to what I went through when I was a kid. It was so sad, but at the same time really validating to know that I was not alone. A lot of the procedures we went through were just a scam for him to collect money off our parents' insurance. And now that I think about it, he probably was so adamant on us not crying and screaming for help because he didn't want parents to hear and come and see what was going on. I shake thinking about this. I really pray that he hasn't opened up another practice somewhere else. I know it's hard not to blame parents in the situation, but the truth is this man was a swift abuser. For every bruise and swell we had, he would have dental explanations that would make the parents feel stupid for asking. He was an authority figure. I don't blame my mom for not believing us. She knew he was firm, but probably thought we were confusing firmness with meanness. To be honest, even writing this, the torture was so wild it actually sounds made up. She eventually did come around. She's not alone, as there were hundreds and hundreds of parents that were duped and deceived by him. To Dr. Dan, please never let us meet again, and to any parent reading this, if you are ever told not to go in with your child to an appointment, something's really not right.
Trust me, I know how this is gonna sound. Everybody is afraid of going to the dentist. It's not a pleasant experience for any of us, but this was different. I'm already trying to convince myself it didn't really happen like it did. Trying to tell myself it wasn't possible. That I fell asleep in the dentist chair and what I remember was just a horrible waking nightmare. But no, it happened. And I have to get the details down while they're still fresh in my mind. Think of this as an interactive diary or a police exhibit. "Have a seat right here," the dental hygienist said with a friendly, perfect smile. Her teeth were small and sparkling white. After I sat down in the dentist chair, she began to reposition it, tilting my head back so she could see what she was doing. The chair kept reclining further and further, beyond what I thought would be its limitations. Eventually it stopped and I looked up at the ceiling tiles, sweat dripping down the sides of my face. Glancing down nervously, I saw my feet were high up in the air, my head down near the floor. Blood was rushing down to my brain by the force of gravity, and I found myself feeling instantly uncomfortable, struggling slightly to breathe. She wasn't very tall, and I'm quite a big guy, so I figured she needed the chair positioned differently than the dentist when he had done his checkup. I'd never been to see this particular hygienist before, but she was already striking me as a bit peculiar. "How's that feel?" she asked, getting her instruments ready. I hesitated, but figured I'd better say something before she started. The uncomfortable feeling would surely only get worse if I didn't. I opened my mouth to speak, and she took that for consent and jammed a rubber-gloved fist inside and began poking around, scraping my teeth and making disgusted-sounding noises. "You really need to brush better," she said, her voice sounding increasingly angry. "This is unacceptable." With each syllable she spoke, she emphasized the word with a brutal scratch on my teeth, poking painfully into my gums. The coppery taste of blood filled my mouth. My heart started pounding faster, and I felt woozy already from being nearly upside down. But I figured I'd have to wait until she stopped for a moment, then I'd ask her to change the chair's position. Her personality was something beyond repair, but at least I could ask her to fix that aspect of this horrible experience. Then she pulled out the water pick. With one hand still inside my mouth, prying it open with a rubber glove, she began to spray a concentrated jet of water into my mouth, ostensibly to clean my teeth. But I could see a glimmer of something else in her eyes. She was enjoying this. The water ran down the back of my throat and I began to sputter and gag, but still, she didn't stop. The water tasted funny, vaguely medicinal. I felt like I was being waterboarded against my will, but something prevented me from moving. Maybe it was a fear of being different, going against the societal norms, being labeled as difficult or strange. The superego, I suppose it's called. That part of me still felt like it was important that this was just a normal dental hygiene appointment. Sure, this woman seemed sadistic and she was enjoying watching me suffer a little too much, but she was a licensed dental hygiene expert. I was probably just being paranoid. It had been a while since I had done this, after all. My hands gripped the seat's armrest tightly, and I struggled to maintain my composure, my breathing coming faster and faster, my heart paying a staccato beat against my ribs. "Oh, this one's not coming clean," she said suddenly, shaking her head. "We'll have to extract it." I jumped, suddenly completely terrified. That was definitely not within her job description. There was something really wrong with this woman. My instincts had been right all along. No thanks. The dentist just looked. He did an x-ray and everything. He said they're all fine. He's getting old. He needs to have his head examined. Even his teeth are starting to turn yellow, getting full of holes. Don't worry. We'll get you fixed up. I'll get you all fixed up. She pulled out a pair of rusty-looking pliers from a nearby drawer, coming at my face with startling speed. I tried to sit up, but she pushed me back down with a strong hand, gravity assisting her efforts. From the upside-down position I had found myself in, I had no leverage. Realizing I couldn't move from the chair, I held up my hands to fight her, but they began to feel heavy and drooped down slowly to my sides, reminding me of the UFO ride at the fair, the Graviton, where you'd get flattened up against the sides by the centrifugal force, feeling heavier and heavier. That was how it felt. My eyelids were feeling heavy too. My thoughts went back to her cleaning my mouth, the medicinal taste of the water pick. There was something in the water pick. "Good," she said, smiling with her pearly white teeth showing. "Sleep. When you wake up, you'll be all better." When I woke up, I was missing all my teeth. My mouth was full of blood and the dentist's office was dark and empty. At least she let me live. I'm not sure what she did with everyone else in the place. I went straight home, afraid to check the other rooms. I can't imagine they'd let her get away with what she did in broad daylight. I think she went on a killing spree in that place. That would certainly explain the bloody footprints in the hallways and the puddles of vital fluid seeping out from behind each office door. The police will be here any minute, and I'll have to explain to them what happened. At least I've got it all written down here. And I have proof. My bloody, empty mouth will need dentures. And I'm still in my 30s. I guess she saw imperfections in all of them and decided that they needed to be extracted. That crazy bitch is still out there somewhere with my teeth, and I want them back. But hey, at least I've always liked smoothies.
The McDonald's was located a bit on the outskirts of town, probably for travelers, but I didn't mind as long as I was getting paid. And it being isolated also meant there would be comparatively fewer customers, so I might even get a chance to squeeze in another hour of sleep. I got into my dad's car and went to the store. It looked pretty dreary. The outside walls had a bit of mold on them. I entered the small building to be greeted by a middle-aged man standing behind the counter. He greeted me with a smile and a nod of acknowledgement. He took me down to the drive-thru booth where I would be receiving orders and explained how everything worked. The ice cream machines, the soft drink dispensers, and the fryers. After he had given a quick tour of the building, he brought me back to the counter, took a deep breath, and said, "Hey kid, do you believe in ghosts and stuff?" "No, but why do you ask?" I inquired. "I know I'm going to sound absolutely insane for this, but you'll have to follow some rules while working here. Now, I know all of them sound unbelievable, but trust me, they are as real as it gets. They could even cost you your life." I looked at him puzzled. "What are the rules, and has anyone been hurt or something?" I said. He pulled out his phone. He had multiple photos of teenagers who formerly worked here, but apparently ignored the rules and have gone missing since. "Why don't you go to the cops?" I asked him interrogatively. "Because no one believes me," he said, his voice getting shaky. "They conduct a full area search. They think I'm insane." He almost burst into tears, but composed himself and begged me to follow the rules and take them seriously. I said that I would, and his face lit up. He handed me the list of rules, thanked me, and left. I reluctantly smoothed out the piece of paper and started reading. List of rules for to survive a night. Rule 1. Keep the lights on the drive-thru counter, where you'll hand customer the food, on at all times, with an exception to Rule 5. There's a creature just lurking nearby, waiting for the lights to go out and letting your guard down. Rule 2. There are security cameras next to the counter table. Always check who is in the drive-thru. If the person ordering is in a black Range Rover Evoque with tinted windows, do not speak a word to him. He will stop bothering you if you ignore his angry threats and drive away in a few minutes. If you speak to him, however, he's going to break into your booth and attack you like a wild animal. God knows what entity he is that can mimic a human voice so perfectly. Rule 3. If someone orders fries, tell them you're all out, because you do not want to open a bag of frozen fries at midnight. Trust me, the scent will attract unwanted attention and it'll end well for no one. Rule 4. If you hear your name being called from behind you, stop everything you're doing, lay down, and close your eyes. You might feel teeth on your limbs or giant talons rubbing against your head or torso, but please do not move. It'll be gone after you hear a demonic giggling. Rule 5. If you see a 5-year-old girl with no eyes standing in the driveway looking directly at the camera, lock all the doors and windows and close all the lights. You might hear screaming, roaring, and screeching from the outside. Once it's been a minute since the sounds have ceased, turn the lights back on and continue with your job. Rule 6. If you hear people in the main dining area, do not check that out. No one is there, since the place will be locked. It's just another distraction by the creature lurking nearby. Rule 7. If the lights go out by themselves, chop off a toe or a finger and place it on the drive-thru counter and duck behind it. You'll hear low growls, followed by a quick snatching sound. Get up once the lights are back and check the counter. If your finger or toe is missing, congratulations, you're gonna live to see another day. If the finger or toe is still there, just pray to God it kills you quickly and doesn't take its time cherishing your screams. Rule 8. It is advised you do not sleep, because then you can miss your name being called, or the 5-year-old girl, or the laughing and talking sounds of people in the dining area, which can cost you your life. I was puzzled. This was a joke. It was a terrible one, I thought to myself, just before noticing movement in one of the bushes in the drive-thru. You know how you think you can be brave and fight through the fear during a fight-or-flight situation? Well, nope. Your body actually seizes up when facing the fear head-on without a warning. Somewhere in my heart, I believed that this list was fake, or an elaborate prank, but I didn't want to take any chances, so I decided to comply to the rules. For the first hour of the night, literally nothing paranormal happened. I didn't even get a customer till then. This will be easy, I sighed and thought to myself. Flipping through the cameras every 20 minutes, I almost didn't notice the little girl peeking through a bush. Her eye sockets were devoid of eyes. I looked at them and they seemed void of any human emotion. They were evil in a way. The more I looked in them, the more I wanted to cry. I was so fixated I almost forgot to switch the lights off, but remembered Rule 5. I got under the counter after switching off the lights. I heard something slam against the left wall of the booth, like something big had lashed out and tried to break through the wall. Then I heard quick footsteps, followed by the cries of a little girl. The cries kept on increasing in intensity, to the point where I thought I would actually go deaf. I covered my ears, but could obviously still hear her cries. The cries ceased within 30 minutes, and I heard a low growl. The growl was followed by the sounds of roaring and slashing of meat. The sounds were so disgusting that I threw up all over the floor. After collecting myself mentally, then got up and turned the lights back on. I cleaned the puke and contemplated what I had just been through. Before I was even finished thinking about this, I heard people talking. The noise was very distant. I couldn't make out any words, just laughs, giggles, and overlapping voices. The night was eerily silent, so I could hear every little thing that went bump in the night. I was just about to go check it out when I remembered some rules regarding this specific event. I reread the list and found it. It was Rule 6. I had to just ignore it and it'd go away. And so I did. I put on my earphones and started with some schoolwork. Almost 1 hour passed. Nothing happened. When finally a customer came through the drive-thru, I served them and was happy that there were actually people starting to come now. I saw another car pulling up. I was really happy now. I wasn't alone in this hellhole any longer. My good mood was immediately put off when I saw it was a black Range Rover with tinted windows. I didn't speak to the angry man on the other side. He screamed his order, then said, "I know you're in there! Are you deaf, motherfucker?" I didn't reply and kept my cool. 10 minutes later, it was gone. My shift is over. Now I'm sitting here typing this, contemplating if this job is really worth $200 a day or not. I wanted to quit, but the guy begged me not to, and that he would double my pay since I was so good at it. But I don't want to risk my life again. Position open as a night shift cab driver at R Cabs. Work 6 hours a day, 12 a.m. to 6 a.m., 6 days a week. Earn $150 a day. For further queries, call 888-888. I called up the number given on the ad. A smooth, high-pitched male voice answered the call. He introduced himself as Dave. "Are you nocturnal or have difficulty staying up at night? What's your age?" But he also asked me some rather odd questions. "Are you an imaginative man? Can you follow a strict list of rules to the T if asked to? Can you keep calm under hazardous conditions and drive safe even when you're speeding?" The questions raised some red flags, but I was too blinded by the high amount of pay they were offering. He told me I could start as soon as today. I looked at the clock hanging from the wall. It was 10:12 p.m. I told him I would be there at 12 a.m. sharp. I reached the decided location at 11:58 p.m. It was just a kilometer away from my house, so I didn't bother bringing my car, as Dave said the company will be providing the cabs. At 12 a.m. sharp, a Prius pulled up and parked in front of me. A man wearing all black got out of the car and walked over to me. He greeted me with a warm smile and gave me the keys to the car I was supposed to be driving. It was the Prius. He congratulated me on getting the job. He set up the R-Cab app on my mobile phone and just before leaving handed me a piece of paper and $150, then said, "Read this paper as soon as you can. It is a list of rules for you to follow." With this, he turned around and started walking into the night. After I saw him turn the corner, I got into the car, closed the doors, and smoothed out the folded piece of paper and started reading. It read, "Hey Felix, this is Dave. Now there is something you should understand. Only you can read the text on this piece of paper, so there is no point in going to the cops or suing us because, frankly, no one would believe you. Keep that in mind. And also, majority of the people you will pick up and drop will not be human." Rule 1. If you get a pickup request from a number with only 6 digits, call them up and politely decline. Do not go within 100 meters of their location for the next 2 hours. Always apologize and make up a reason why you cannot come. The creature doesn't take rude remarks well. Rule 2. Always seat the passengers in the back and check their mirror reflection. If they have a reflection, drop them off to their location and do not ask for money. They will pay as they wish. If they do not have a reflection, take the pistol in the glove compartment and shoot yourself. It will be a marginally painless death compared to what they will do to you. Rule 3. Do not eat anything non-vegetarian in the cab. The smell of meat might capture some creatures' unwanted attention, and believe me when I say, you do not want their attention. Rule 4. If you get a call from a person you know, do not answer the call. It is not them. If you do respond to them, you will hear a deafening screech which has been responsible for bursting eardrums in the past. Rule 5. Do not try to abandon the car on the road, or you will die the most brutal way your brain can imagine. Yes, they can read minds. Rule 6. You cannot give this job up without working here for at least 2 weeks, for the reasons I cannot specify because of the company's policy. Rule 7. If you get dark figures running along the car, speed up and try to ignore them. Do not stop or slow down. If you maintain a speed of 80+ kilometers per hour, they will not be able to catch you. The other option is driving on a busy road. They will perform mock charges and give you illusions that they are gaining on you. But if you're driving fast, just keep driving fast for 3 or 4 more minutes and they will be gone. Rule 8. If you smell the rotten meat in the back seat, do not look behind you. Instead, take the pistol from the glove compartment, close your eyes, turn around and fire on all 3 back seats. It will be gone. It can't hurt you if you cannot see it. Rule 9. If your engine dies down, do not step out of the car. It is a bait to get you out. Wait for 20 to 30 minutes and the car should start right back up. Rule 10. Do not dial anyone. They will not pick up. Calling for help also annoys the creatures after you. Your most beloved person might die of natural causes just the next day if you try to reach out to people who will not be picking up because their phones won't even be ringing. Rule 11. At 6 a.m., bring this car to your house, leave the key in, and walk back inside your home. The car will disappear in an hour or so and will be right back there the next night at 12 a.m. I chuckled at the stupid list. Scary prank on the new guy, huh? I whispered under my breath and started driving. After just 5 to 10 minutes, my mom started calling. Just before I could pick it up, I froze with fear. I could smell the scent of rotting meat. I slowly opened the glove compartment, took out the pistol, closed my eyes, then turned around and shot 6 rounds, 2 bullets at each seat. I heard a loud shriek. After about 5 seconds, I opened my eyes to see that the seats were empty, but one of the windows was open and there was some blood on the left seat. I cleaned it up with a towel, kept in the glove compartment, and started driving. I got a request. It was a regular number. I started driving towards its location. The passenger was a girl. She got in the back seat and I started driving. I slowly tilted the rearview mirror, hoping and praying that she had a reflection. Luckily, she did. We eventually reached her destination, which was on a farm on the outskirts of town. She tipped $10, got out of the car, and climbed up one of the farm's walls with ease. I sat there in the car, shocked. Eventually, the bleating of goats and the sound of flesh tearing broke me out of my trance, and I started driving away. After half an hour of contemplating what I had just witnessed, I received another request. I checked its location. It was as if my heart just stopped beating. When I saw the passenger's number, it only had 6 digits and was just 87 meters away from me. I started my car back up and started driving. It was gaining on me. I started panicking. It was only 50 meters away from me. I could now feel the ground shaking footsteps and low-pitched growls. I sped up to nearly 100 kilometers per hour and noticed that I was successfully moving away from it. I was 92 meters away from it when I noticed them, the dark figures. They were running alongside my car. I almost swerved off the road and into a wall 2 times, but I kept my cool and tried my best to ignore them. The figures, which looked like shadows of a human just a minute ago, distorted into demonic shadows within seconds. Walls around me started to bleed. I somehow maintained a consistent speed of nearly 100 kilometers per hour without crashing, and after a short, intense change, everything was suddenly back to normal. I was beginning to think I had lost my mind. I wanted to call my mother, but with everything that had happened up till that point in time, I did not want to break a rule. Then I remembered I had to make a call to the passenger and apologize, and that's what I did. It sounded like a charismatic young over the phone, but I knew better. After this whole ordeal was over, it was just 4 a.m. The next 2 hours passed by pretty normally. I picked up 3 more passengers, but they seemed normal. I did exactly what Dave told me to do, parked the car outside my house and went to sleep. I woke up at 9 a.m. and gave my mother the $150. She was really happy. I knew if I told her what had actually gone down, she would not believe me. So I'm sitting here typing this at 10 p.m. I do not want to go back to that car again, but I have no option and no one will believe me. If I die, here lies my story. If I make it through this night, I will be grateful to God. I just wanted to know, has anybody else gotten this job offer from R Cabs? I went inside and sat down. There were only 5 other people on the plane with me. After I sat down, the air hostess presented us with a typical airplane safety demonstration video. I didn't pay any attention to it. Just before the takeoff, I picked up the airplane rules booklet because I was just bored. I opened it and inside there was something scribbled in a hurry on a piece of paper. It was a list of rules. It read, "Whoever is reading this needs to know that this plane and perhaps this whole airline is something ungodly and supernatural. If you made the mistake of boarding the plane, you're gonna have a rough flight. If you want to survive, please follow these rules. Rule 1. If you check your phone or watch right now, you'll see the time read 1 a.m. no matter when you boarded this flight. Do not panic and do not ask about it to anyone on the plane. They're not human." I checked the time. It read 1 a.m. I was convinced the rules were true since I reached the airport at 2:15 a.m. I continued. Rule 2. If you see light coming from outside the airplane window, Put the covers on the window or the light will go so bright you might lose your vision. Literally, not metaphorically. Rule 3. If the air hostess asks if you want to eat something, politely decline. She might get too restless if you do not eat any food, but she can't hurt you. She'll also attack you if you act rude to her, so be polite. Rule 4. If you hear someone call your name, the voice might even be familiar. Don't turn around. You might hear sniffing behind you or something scratching your seat. It's best you don't look at it. Looking at it might cause it to attack you. If you look behind when it is present, just pray it kills you in one swift blow. When the sniffing stops, it'll be gone. Rule 5. At 2:30 a.m., you'll see 2 passengers fighting with each other. It'll be something very petty. Get involved and resolve the fight. Not following this rule won't cost you your life, but only do it if you have a strong stomach, as they will turn into hellish creature and fight to the death. They won't harm you. There will be a severe turbulence in the smell of rancid meat the whole flight. Rule 6. Do not go to the bathroom during the entire time you're in this plane. Just don't. God knows what kind of creatures lurk inside. There's a reason why the airplane will try to get you to eat and drink more. Rule 7. No matter how fast or slow a regular flight would get you to your destination, this flight will always take 7 hours. You'll reach your destination on 8 a.m. sharp. If you reach before that, I'm sorry for you. You'll end up in a world where you'll be the only human. You'll either die of starvation or simply lose your mind because of the loneliness. Rule 8. Keep checking to see if all the passengers are still on the plane every hour or so. If even one is missing, tell the air hostess. She'll take care of it. If someone is missing for more than 1.5 hours without you noticing, you'll pass out, then wake up falling from the sky without any gear. Long story short, you'll fall to your death in the most brutal way possible. Rule 9. At 5 a.m., go and lock the bathroom door without anyone noticing. The creatures inside will try to come out. If the door is locked, they won't be able to. If someone notices you locking the door, you'll be as good as dead. Rule 10. At 6 a.m., you'll experience paralysis. You'll see creatures in your peripheral vision. They'll try to scare you. Close your eyes if you have to, because if you're scared, they'll tear you apart quite literally. It'll be a slow, painful death. They can sense fear, so if you distract yourself, you'll survive. This is the hardest rule to follow, as it'll be their last-ditch effort to kill you. Rule 11. Once you get off the plane, take your luggage and book it outside the airport. Don't look face the opposite direction. Then after 30 seconds, look back. If it's gone, so is the curse. If it isn't, try to run, although you'll not be able to outrun the creatures chasing you. I survived to give you this list of rules. Please make sure you never fly with the Vulture Airlines again and warn others about it. I chuckled at the stupid list until I heard my father's voice behind me, calling my name. 1. Do not look down. If you can't tell which way the ground is, close your eyes and relax. Your body will naturally orient upwards. You won't die if you look down, but you will be terrified by what you see and have an adrenaline rush. You don't need adrenaline, you need to focus. 2. Pull the 3 rings on the right side of the parachute to release the backup chute. It will not release. This is normal. 3. Prepare for impact. Fields and trees are good places to land. Avoid water at all costs. Even if you don't die from the impact, the seaweed will pull you down under. 4. Stay awake. You probably feel exhausted now that you hit the ground. It might have felt like a soft landing, but you're in shock. You will die if you fall asleep. If you stay alive long enough, you will start to hurt. That is a sign that you are coming out of shock and that you might survive. Ignore the pain. 5. The people in the distance are not here to rescue you. You probably see people in the distance. When they start walking towards you, show no signs of life. They will tell you that they were sent to rescue you. Resist the urge to accept their help. From here, one of 2 things will happen. If they leave, go to 6. If they pick you up and carry you off, go to 5A. 5A. Continue to show no signs of life. You must have moved a muscle. They will kill you if you try to escape, now that you are in their grasp. You want to show them that you are not a threat. 5B. They will take you deep into the forest. Once they put you down, answer all of their questions falsely. These are the type of people you do not want to have your personal information. I hope you're a good liar. If they believe you, they will ask you for a gift. I recommend offering multiple non-vital organs. They will take them. Do not complain about the lack of sedation. If you told them the truth about who you are, they will come for more once you return home. Run off when they aren't looking. They won't chase you. They've already gotten what they wanted. If you run far enough in any direction, you will find society. 6. Once the people leave, wait at least half an hour before moving again. Eventually, people who look the same as the ones who just left will come to you. These are not the same people. You can go with them. They will lead you to safety.
I met this girl at a bar. She was a little quiet. When I first saw her, she was sitting alone in the corner. I had maybe drunk a little too much, and if I were sober, maybe I would have noticed the weird smell she had or the vacant look in her eye, but I didn't. I asked if she needed a ride home or if there was someone she wanted me to call, but she didn't say anything. I know how this sounds, but honest, I had the best intentions. I asked if she wanted some water or a coffee. Did she have any friends with her? Nothing. Nada. Zilch. She didn't say anything. I know if it were me and someone found me in this bad of shape, I'd want them to take care of me, so that's what I did. I got an Uber because I was in no shape to drive and helped her walk out of the bar. Man, was she messed up. She had this weird two-step stagger when she moved, like a little lean to the one side. She was still really pretty. The Uber guy was on the fence about letting us in the car. He said she needed a doctor. He asked if she would get blood on his car and pointed at the gash on her leg. I touched it and it seemed like it had dried. I told him she must have fallen or something. We were both pretty smashed, and getting home was for the best. He definitely didn't want us in the car, but maybe he felt sorry for how drunk I was. I mean, I could barely walk because I was so drunk. Otherwise, I'd definitely not take someone home like this. I went to Catholic school, for God's sake. Anyway, she didn't have a purse or an ID or a phone or anything. I swear I asked like several times where she lived, and she never said anything. I didn't know what to do. I was stuck with this girl who was a mess, and I was definitely super drunk and not sure what to do. So I decided to take her to my house, but not in a Harvey Weinstein way, like in a normal way. I had the best intentions. We got to my house and I double-checked she was okay with going in. I said I would be glad to have the Uber take her somewhere else. I'm pretty sure the driver heard this. You could ask him. She didn't say anything other than like this little growl hiss sound, so I figured maybe she was hungry? I took her inside in a definitely platonic, with no bad intention kind of way, and set her on the sofa. I told her I'd get her something to eat. I asked what she liked, but she didn't say. I'm pretty sure she felt more comfortable here than at the bar. I was confident I was doing the right thing. I figured maybe she wasn't hungry, so I sat down next to her, like in a friendly way, not in any sort of stranger danger way. She didn't move. I leaned in closer just to see if maybe she was speaking low and I couldn't hear her, not for any other reason. Really. I put my arm around her in case she was cold. If she had said to move it, I definitely would have. No questions asked, but she didn't, so I figured it was fine. That's when everything went downhill. Without any warning, she turned and bit my arm. I didn't know human teeth could sink so deep. She ripped her face away and took a mouthful of my arm with her. I pulled away and she jumped on top of me, but not in a, inappropriate way. She clawed and bit at my face. It took all my strength to throw her off. I tried to run, but she was on me in a flash. By her own choice, mind you. I didn't know what to do. I reached for the closest thing, a laptop stand, and hit her head with it. She went limp and fell. I wasn't trying to kill her. I swear. I have 3 younger sisters. Not calling the police isn't an admission of guilt. Where she bit me started to itch like crazy. I probably should have called an ambulance. When I wrapped her with a rug, it was definitely about cleanliness, not hiding her body. I'm a good person. I scratched the bite as it spread up my arm. Maybe I needed a shot. Maybe it was a bacterial infection and I needed some antibiotics. Either way, I didn't do any of that. I just kept scratching. When I put her in the back of my truck, it wasn't to get rid of her body. I mean, who would want to see their loved one in such a state? I wore a jacket so that the bite wouldn't bleed everywhere, not to hide evidence. When the jacket sleeve became crusty with blood, I should have probably gotten a skin graft. I should have probably gotten my arm amputated, but I didn't. I kept scratching. I scratched until my arm was numb and I couldn't even feel it. I knew it itched though. I could pull back the sleeve and look down at the purple and green skin and layers of orange pus and knew it was itchy. The way the skin peeled back and the crusty way it tried to scab, I knew it was itchy even if I couldn't feel it anymore.
It was a lot harder to drive with one hand, but I really couldn't feel this infected, crusty limb attached to my shoulder. I should have probably gone to a hospital. I'm not saying my story might have sounded suspicious to a nurse or a doctor, or even a cop, because that's definitely not why I drove to a swamp. When I took her body out of my truck, the itch started to creep up my neck. That itchy, scratchy tingle. I could feel it going from my cheek. I rubbed my face on the collar of my stinky, crusty jacket to make it go away. Maybe some vitamins would have done the trick. Or an essential oil. I hear high alkaline water is a lifesaver. It was probably too late for that anyway. I don't believe zombies are real, but if I did, I think this is what it would be like to be bitten by one. I didn't unroll the rug to dump her body into the water because I thought alligators would eat her. Sometimes you can't explain your actions. Maybe this bite on my arm was messing with my mind. I did feel feverish. I'm a great guy. This is out of character for me. When the itch spread to my eye and it got hard to drive home, I should have gone to an eye doctor to see what this infection was. I tried blinking it out, but it kept itching. This is definitely not a confession. I don't think I dumped her body in a malicious way. Even if it feels good at the time, never scratch your eye with a set of car keys. If I wasn't so lazy, I could have gotten some eye drops, or a hot compress would have helped, but I didn't do any of that. I kept on keeping on. It's not like I'm afraid to look at my face in the mirror because I'm worried my flesh is rotting off. Zombies are make-believe. My scalp is drying out. My hand comes back with clumps of hair after I try to make the itching stop. I think I'm dying, but not in a living dead way. I'm starting to smell like that girl. I don't know what this infection is, but it's getting worse. I should post this in a medical sub or telemed. I should email my doctor, but I'm not. I'm sharing it with you instead. This post isn't any kind of admittance of guilt or trying to clear my conscience, because I didn't do anything wrong. But the more I think about that girl, the more I realize that maybe something was wrong with her. And whatever it was is happening to me.